So here I am showing you something illegal. How about that? No, not really. But point taken. You would not want to use this for harm.
Because what Professor Dewey was telling me was that port scanning is basically going to a door and checking to see if it's locked.
Right, right. It's just wandering around looking to see which house has an open door. If you walk down the street and you notice that 17 houses have open doors and you write down their addresses, that's kind of suspicious.
But you didn't go into the house, so they really can't prosecute you for anything.
Yeah, you didn't go into it, but you were exercising, their machine services for that microsecond that it took to ask it. So, here's what I'm going to do. We need to get the IP address of the machine that we're curious about scanning. We're just going to scan our own machine. So address is equal to 192. Is it 128.0.0.1? That's localhost.
127.
127.0.0.1 is localhost. So we're only going to be scanning our own machines, open ports. All right, so if we do Netstat on our machine, we can see which ports are currently active. So I'm going to load up CMD. I'm going to type in Netstat. And it shows a list of ports. We can read it like this. We have established a connection with that address at that particular port. We see quite a few different ports that we have open, that Windows has open all the time, right? Here's the foreign addresses that they are connected to. We should be able to query our own ports as well, and I'm not seeing how to do that, so I'm not going to mess with it. Well, let's do a quick Google here.
Can't you ping the line?
Is that really how you do it? I don't want to do it PowerShell. Netstat minus A dash minus B. Let's give that a try. Pingstat will see if there's a connection to it. Netstat, I mean if it's available.
Oh, it requires innovation. We can't do it on our own.
Yeah, we can. How do we do that? No, we can't. All right, forget it. Okay,
Well,
so
you
we're,
could probably, but I don't think the students
I can't either. I have just as restricted rights as y'all do. All right, so we probably will go out and try to check like the rose.edu web server to see if they're listening on 443. But for now, we're going to try this. Okay, so we have an IP address to check. And now we're going to try to check a specific port, see if it's open. So try this. Oh, and by the way, we're going to need to import the socket library first. Import socket. Socklet, socket. So try this. Sock.connect. And I'm sorry that this syntax here looks a little bit odd, and I'm not sure why. I would need to investigate it. I couldn't find my own example, so I grabbed one off the internet before coming in. I hope this works. Why the double? Oh, because that's a tuple. Socket.connect requires a tuple rather than a parameter. Its parameter is a tuple. You could do that, and it would just work just fine. You could do, I'm going to open that, and why not, let's explore what a tuple looks like. Okay, so our target is our address, and we don't know what port we're accessing yet. So why don't we just say port is equal to, did I say 443 is HTML? And there we go. This looks like a list, and we've seen lists before. But a tuple is just a series of pieces of data that are individually accessible, but it's not really meant to be treated as a list. Like if you have a point in space, it's got an X, Y, and a Z, right? Or you have a vector in physics, and it's got, an amount of, thrust in one direction and an amount of thrust in another direction. Or if you have a complex number with an imaginary and a real component, right? Those things would all make tuples. Like if you had a name, you could say, my name is Jeff, don't do this, comma Thompson. And then, I could access them each individually, and I could store that as one element in a list, something like that. I'd rather take this port and this A in stuff and move that to before the try. The only thing that should be in the try is the thing that might actually fail.
Is it still a tuple like that?
Yes, yeah, it's a tuple wherever it goes. And so we're going to do sock.connect target port, but if that fails, we're going to print a failure message. So except, print could not connect to, end quote, comma, A. If that succeeded, we're going to print connection made to, end quote, comma, A. Now our machines are not running an HTML server, so I'm not expecting this to really work. That's why I wanted Netstat to kick out a list of opening ports, of listening ports. All right, that may be enough to give it a shot. Lecture HIJ. Alrighty. Could not connect to that. Alrighty. Well, how about rose.edu? How do we do an NS lookup in Python? Let's find that out so that we could actually type in a name. We want to find somebody's IP address based on the server name. And I hope it's easy. Import dns.resolver. No, I don't want to do it that way. You should use the socket library. I don't want to do it that way either. Go, 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 go. Socket get by host address. Well, that's interesting, but I'm not seeing how I need to do it. All right, forget about it. We can look them up by hand. Let's run a series of connection attempts on this. Siri, I was not talking to you when I said series. Okay, so why don't we put this in a loop to where we're checking a series of ports. So for port in range, parentheses, starting at 1 and going up to 1,000. Colon, and then I need to tab all this stuff over. I'm going to print a done message. And I can't see. Oh, that was dumb. What did I do wrong here? Moronic. Yeah, I left that there. I'm not going to set port equal 443 if we're passing it to a 4 counter. Bless you. All right, now I'm getting suspicious that this is not working correctly because we should have at least some ports, opening ports on it. So uno momento. All right, let's try this a little bit differently. I'm going to go with another example and see if we can get it to work. Instead of setting the address like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a server to scan. So address equals input scan server colon end quote in parentheses. And then we're going to try to look that up. So address equals socket.getHost by name, all lowercase. If it was in Java, we'd see some other uppercase letters. Address like that. And maybe we shouldn't have called it address. Maybe we should have called it server name here to be a little bit more specific. So how about that? S name for server name. I just changed that line. and S name for server name here. All right, I'm going to check rows.edu. And it's still set to 127.0.0.1 because of this line. Same mistake I made last time. Delete that. Why don't we print the address out, though? Print address found colon end quote comma address. Because what if that website doesn't exist? All right, so this is saying that the server, rows.edu, is found at that IP address. That could even be true.
Can you go back to the code?
Yeah, just a sec. All right. So we're going to use a variant of the sock connect using the syntax I see here. Hopefully it may be more reliable. So we're going to change this line here. We're removing sock.connect completely. And we're going to do result equals sock.connect underscore ex parentheses a end parentheses. And we're going to check to see if the result is 0 or not. That's what I was doing wrong, is I wasn't checking the return result. So if the result is equal to 0, colon, we're going to print a comma, quote, port open, end quote, in parentheses. Else, colon, let's print a comma, port not open. A comma, quote, port not open, end quote, in parentheses. I'll bring the code back in just a second. And it's still not working, so I may abort this. I had this working last semester just fine, and it's irking me that it's not working now. I am being sloppy. Okay, before result is equal to sock.connect, do this. Where did it even get sock? All right, here's one problem, is that my try and my accept are hiding errors because they're capturing all exceptions. So that's what is stymieing me at this point, is that I'm not seeing the results of my mistakes. That can make this a little bit harder to diagnose, so I'm going to take my try and my accept out for now. And I'm going to just put if true here, so it'll go ahead and enter that block of code so I don't have to unindent that block of code. Now I'm going to at least get an error message. Well, for one thing, I typed something that's not there. But let's do sock is equal to socket dot socket. And this is going to be a whole bunch of weird typing. What I'm tempted to do is to import socket from the socket library so I don't have to type in socket.socket everywhere through it. But I'll run with it. Okay, socket.socket, parentheses, socket dot af underscore inet, not init, comma, socket dot all caps sock underscore stream, parentheses in parentheses. And now maybe it's going to work better, or maybe we'll at least get the syntax error that's causing it to fail. True is not defined. My mistake. Derp. If true, like that. We're going to put it back in that try-catch block pretty quickly. All right, now it's actually working, and so Rose can come in here and shut off our internet access. They're not going to do that, but we're seeing it count down. It's slow. I'm going to skip it ahead to the 400 since I'm expecting rose.edu. Was it 443 or 334, the HTTP port?
80 is
443 for HTTPS.
443 is HTTPS.
Okay, so we want to check 80 and we want to check 443. We could make this a list and just start scanning through the list. Maybe we will do that. I'm going to go back and make this a try-catch again. A try-except. I keep saying catch because that's the term, the Java and the C++ term for it. So let's make a list of addresses we want to check. We want to check address 80, comma, and 443, which is HTML and, HTTP and SHTTP. And so no longer for port in range 1,1001, we're just going to do for port in our list. And I probably better do some wandering around to make sure that I haven't. Yep, and those two ports are open. So one thing to note about it is that establishing that connection seems to take so long that this is not really all that feasible for searching a huge stream of them. I'm going to try making a change. What happens if we create just one sock object? And I don't know if this is going to work or not. And then I'm going to change it back for port in range, 70, 100. I'm going to check those ports around there. Not going much faster. It takes a little while for it to try to attempt to establish, right? And then to time out. If you wanted to do this a little bit more discreetly, you would put a pause in there, right? Check, pause, 20 seconds between each port that you're trying to check. If you wanted to do it really fast, you could launch a whole bunch of threads that would all attempt to do it at the same time, and then you're getting back into the land of where somebody might notice and get really unhappy at you. Okay, so there was only one port open in that particular range, but we've written a cute little port scanner. I'm going to take this back into being for port in L colon. And then I'm going to leave the rest of this code alone, see if I can condense it to all fit on one page. I'm not sure that's going to really be too feasible. All right. All right, so we've written our little port scanner. We could modify this. We could make like this a function that would check to see if it was, we could wrap all that up in a function and we would take the address and the port as parameters. That wouldn't be a bad idea. So let's come up here and do def space open underscore port. And we need two parameters, address comma port, parentheses in parentheses, colon. Just cut. Yeah, this is a needless change. I'm not going to waste our time by doing that. Sorry about that. I'm undoing that. So writing text to a file. Writing text to a file is almost as easy as writing to the screen, except we have to establish a connection to the file, and we use a different method. Unlike C++, where we can just use stream.io in either case, for those few of y'all who've done C++, I don't really feel like doing this code over and over anymore, so I'm going to comment it all out. We've got the code working, but I don't want it to happen every single time we run it, so I'm going to put triple quotes up at the bottom and the top. All right, so let's write something out to a file. But I'm going to demonstrate something to you first. I'm going to use Notepad to make a file that I'm going to import into Excel. And so the first one is going to be called quantity. The first column is going to be called quantity. The second one is going to be called price. And the third one is going to be called total. We're not going to fill in the total, but we are going to fill in the quantity and the price. I'm ordering. Let's add one more header. This is going to be the product, right? So product in quote comma, and you don't have to type all this in. This is just demonstrating how to open up, import something into Excel that is comma delimited or tab delimited or something of the effect. So our product is milk, whole milk, comma, and we're buying one of them, and the price is $10.95. And we're also buying wheat bread, but we want 6 loaves of it. There's a rogue 1 there. And each loaf of bread is only $1.99. This must be really expensive, where a gallon of milk costs $10.95 per gallon. Make sure you hit the final return just so that it ends, doesn't end on that line, so that we have that little blank line there. We don't really want a blank line, but we want to be able to get to the. So let's do a save as, and I'm going to call this just import.txt. I'm going to save it to the desktop to make it easy to find. Import.txt. Now I'm going to launch Excel, and I'm going to bring that in. Blank workbook. Now that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to open a file. I want to open a file from this PC. They sure have made Excel over the years take longer and longer to get to the place where you can pick what file you want to open. And it's a text file, so I'm going to choose all files, find my little text file. I called it import.txt, and it's bringing up the so-called text import wizard. This stuff is delimited. It's delimited by commas or tabs. So, next. It's delimited by commas. Next. This column is all text. That stuff not all text. That stuff is not all text. I forgot to do something. I forgot to say that we have a header. My data has header, so I hit the back a couple of times. Now when I come over here, it knows that the header is indeed text, and that these are supposed to be text, and that these are numbers, and so we're going to leave them alone. And we import it, and there we go. We could draw a graph or whatever. Now it's not calculating the total, but we could do that. Or sum, or however you do, equations in Excel, right. And so I'm going to copy and paste that. All right, and that there, we wrote some data out to a file, and we were able to bring it into Excel. I'm wishing these didn't have quotes around it. The word product wound up being correct. Maybe it's because I preceded these with spaces. If I took all the spaces out of that header line, it might work better. Now, I'm not going to mess with it anymore because we have the idea. Yes, sir.
How did you import it back into that Excel?
Yeah, 'cause I can't get mine. Oh, you just open,
I did not hear the question. I'm so sorry.
How did you import the text file into that Excel?
Let me show you. I'll show you again. Yep. Like I wasn't really expecting everybody to follow along, so I admire y'all's ambition. What I did is I went to File Open, and I chose this PC, and I chose whatever directory under My Documents where I had saved that file. In this case, it was under Desktop. And since it's not a text file, I had to switch it to All Files in order. Excuse me, since it's not an Excel file, I had to switch it to All Files to find it. So let me see if I can get y'all going as well.
Is it delimited or fixed width?
It's delimited by commas. So now you're going to choose. file open. All right, it's delimited. We do have headers, so click My Data Has Headers. Go to the next one. We're going to tell it that it's delimited by commas. There are no tabs in it, so we can deselect that one. Click Next. I'm going to say that this column is all text, and I'm going to leave the other two alone. And we wouldn't be having these double quotes here if I had removed all the spaces from my headers. Unfortunately, I had spaces in my headers. Mess it up a little bit. And then I bring it in, and there we go. And we could, add formulas or whatever. And it could have read in, we could have written out 1,000 lines or something like that. And now we're going to write a program that really does create something.
So then how come my one didn't get imported?
Because there's no comma after thread. And maybe I see two commas in front of E2, maybe not. It's giving me all sorts of grief. You have to close the spreadsheet and open it again. Anybody who was trying to open it in Excel, did you accomplish it? I don't want to rush past that for those of y'all who are interested. Limited, it's headers, it's got commas.
So then like would it be an easy way to do this in the future? Like if you have like mountains of data you gotta go through, you use a Python program to convert it into a text file and then you use that
Exactly.
text file to put it in an Excel spreadsheet.
Right, right. Or in whatever programming language you like. Okay, so let's write a little bitty program that's going to create a file and dump out some numbers in it so that we can import them into Excel. Let's get the file name first. fn is equal to input, parentheses, quote, save, not wave, save to what file name, question mark. And I'm going to put a little caret here to tell them where to type. So angle, quote, parentheses. Now we're going to try to open the file. We should put this in a try except block because if they enter a bad file name like a drive letter that doesn't exist, q colon whatever, it can generate an exception. But I'm not going to do that. Sloppy. So file is equal to open, parentheses, fn, comma, quote, r. Nope, wait, we're writing, so w. End quote, in parentheses. Assuming that worked, we can now start writing to the file. So let's do that. Now this thing that we write to the file, and what makes writing to files, even text files, slightly more difficult, is that we can only write strings to it. Any numeric data has to be converted to a string before we can do that. But we're awesome. We can handle that. So here's what we're going to do. Let's write out file.write. Let's write out our headers. X, comma, X star star 2, comma, X star star 3. End quote. Or I'm going to change that to X, comma, square, comma, cube. End quote. Now I'm going to make a deliberate mistake here. And then for X in range 1, comma, 1001, in parentheses, colon. We need to create a string to write out. So string is equal to X plus a quote, comma, end quote, plus X to the power 2, plus a quote, comma, quote, plus X star star 3. And then let's write that string out. So file.write S.
Is it possible to make a font a little bigger?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sorry that it's doesn't seem to be that way. Let's boost the gain. All right, that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. You know what? I'm not going to deliberately make the mistake. The mistake I was about to make is that unlike the print statement, it does not automatically go to the next line. So let's do a slash in there. I just changed this line. And I'm going to do a file dot write parentheses quote \n right there as well. Or I could add it just to this one. I'll do that instead. I'm going to delete that file and I'm going to write out s plus quote \n end quote. And then I need to close the file. You always want to close the file as soon as possible because, as you've seen before, once something is open, the operating system can put a lock on it, right? You can't copy it somewhere. You might not be able to back it up. So, and then file.close. And I'm going to run it. Save to what file name? t.txt. Boom, it blows up. What did I do wrong? It's because these are not numbers. So I goofed. I'm going to rewrite this so that it works. It's kind of stupid. Okay, here's how I would have to fix it. It's the primitive way of doing it. str parentheses x. And then str parentheses x star star 2. And then str parentheses star star 3. Everything has to be text before we can save it to a text file. Now, there are other kinds of files, but we're trying to create text files. All right, lickety-split, it wrote out those 1,000 lines of data. I might have appreciated seeing a message, right? Print parentheses quote saved data to end quote fn. Just so that we see some kind of message, so we know that it worked. Now, if I wanted to, I could import that into Excel now. It will be in the same directory as our Python script, unless you're not using idle. If you're using Notepad++ to run it, it's going to be trying to save your data into the guts of the Python directories, and you're going to get permission errors. So I hope everybody is using idle. All right, so out there I have a t.txt file. File, open, this PC, my documents, my favorite directory, t.txt, and it's just the same business. It's delimited, it has headers, it's separated by commas, not tabs. I'm not going to even bother, I'm just going to say general, which is telling it to guess everything. And there we go. And so we could graph this or whatever, right? You know, I could select these three things, and I could insert a graph and all the, you know, whatever kind of fun stuff we wanted to do. Yay, we've graphed it. Okay. Let me come back there and help now. So let's ask for what file name to read. We could just assume it's the same file, but it's more fun. Makes us have to do more typing. Fn is equal to input, parentheses, quote, read from what file name, end quote, in parentheses. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to open the file. File equals open, fn comma, but we're opening it for reading. If we did not put a parameter at all, it would default to reading. But just for clarity, I'm going to put the comma, quote, r, end quote there anyways. And now let's read it. String equals file.read, parentheses in parentheses, and let's print that string out. And by the way, this is not my recommended way of doing it because it's going to read in the entire file into one variable. Not necessarily what I want to do. Then we need to close the file. So file.close. I'm going to scroll this stuff up, assuming that the rest of it is working for us now. To make things easier to run, I'm just going to say save to what file name T, read for what file name T, and it printed out the entire thing. I don't really want all the data in one string. I want to process it line by line. There's two different ways I could do that. Yeah, there may be more, but there's a function called readLine, which gets us just a single line. And so it got the first line. Now, if we were going to enter a loop, and read all that data, it might be a good idea to skip the first line anyways, right? Because that first line has headers in it, and that's not data that we could add up. So I don't mind doing that, but we don't want to just read the first line. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use a for loop, and it's going to look like the for loops we've used in other contexts. For line in file, colon. Let's get that data. We've already got it. Let's print out that line. Print parentheses line in parentheses. And this is not going to be perfect, but it's getting closer to what we want. T. All right, one thing I notice about it immediately is that it's putting blank lines between them. And the reason why is that when we're reading from the file, it's counting the \ns as part of the data. We want to remove the \ns in order to process it, because when we print it out, it's printing out blank lines. Because instead of finding out, don't type this, instead of finding out that the data look like this, it's saying that the data looks like that. And so when we print it out, it kicks out, a blank line every time. So we need to strip that data. We need to remove the carriage returns and extra white space at the end. So we're going to do line equals line.strip, parentheses in parentheses. That says remove the white space from either end. All tabs, all spaces, and all carriage returns. Now maybe you want the tabs at the beginning of the data, in which case you're going to call rstrip, which strips only the right side. Or you could call lstrip to strip out only the left side. But I'm just going to assume that stripping spaces and carriage returns from the beginning and the end is the right thing to do.
So how would you put the L and the R in? Would it be in the parentheses?
With the function.
Okay, I did not understand the question. Please repeat.
You were saying that you can either strip it from the left side or the right side. Would it go in?
Oh, it goes at line dot, not inside there. It would be, yeah, if you want to strip off the end of the string only, it's rstrip.
Okay.
Yeah. T. And now we got blank lines. Alrighty. I bet we have covered how to convert a comma separated string into a list. Anybody remember?
To a list, don't you start it as list?
You split.
Split. We use a split command. So let's do that. Now that we have our line of data, let's split it. Capital L equals line.split, parentheses, comma, parentheses, quote, comma, quote, in parentheses. And now instead of printing out the line, let's print out the list, like that. T. All right, now it's a list. That'd make it a lot easier to process. We could go through the list and calculate the sum of each column if we wanted to. Not going to do that, but we could.
Wait, so then if you were to put this in Excel, would it still have those brackets around it or no?
Well, no, our data looks like it did originally. If we saved this back out to a file, yeah, we might have the brackets to worry about and stuff like that. Let me check to see where we're going with this as far as homework is concerned, to see if we know enough. And that's the wrong class. Phooey. Where's my 11 o'clock script programming? Who took fundamentals and learned about file I/O in the past? Waggle your hand. Who took fundamentals and didn't learn about file I/O? Waggle your hand.
Did or did
Did not.
not over it well.
Everybody? Okay. All right. Last time I asked that, half the class had taken fundamentals but didn't know about file I/O. So I hope that this is not too much duplication of what you already know.
No,
Here's,
it's not a refresher.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what the homework assignment is. Write code that will prompt the user for data to save to a file. It will ask the user for the file name, yay, and then ask the user to enter sentences, which are written to the file. And the user enters stop to quit writing to the file. And I give you some pseudocode to make it kind of easy. You ask for the file name. You open that file name for writing. While true, you input the sentence. You write the sentence to the file. You write a new line to the file. And then if the sentence is equal to stop, then you break. Then you close the file. And then part B. Modify the program to read from a file. Ask the user for the file name. Open it and display every line, which is practically just a cut and paste of the stuff that we wrote here at the end. Make sure to use strip to clean each line of data. So we know enough to do all of this now. Let's go check the PowerPoint to see if there was fun stuff that I skipped past. Writing text to a file. To open a file for writing, you use W. To open a file for reading, you use R. And it's also possible to open a file for both reading and writing, but for a text file, I don't really see why that would be to our advantage unless you knew that every line was of exactly the same length. And you can seek in the file. You can move to a different position, like you've read the file, but you want to start reading from the beginning again. You can seek to the beginning of the file. So the .write method expects a string, which is why we had to go to the effort of doing this here. We could have done this more elegantly. I feel like doing it more elegantly because I'm embarrassed to have shown you this. So S is equal to parentheses, %d, comma, %d, comma, %d, and we've seen this syntax before in print statements, but we haven't seen it in quite this syntax. End quote, %sign, and then we're going to declare a tuple, so we need to put some parentheses in here. And inside our tuple, we're going to do x, comma, x star star 2, comma, x star star 3. Now, depending on the way your brain is wired, maybe you like the first way better than the second way. Either one of them will work.
Do there need to be other parentheses around the tuple, or is that okay?
This declares it to be parentheses, and if we were passing it into a print statement, we'd have a, like, right, it'd be like that.
Okay, that's what I was
Right, and so on our port scanner, we had to create a tuple, and that's why we saw those double parentheses, but then when we took the creation of that tuple out, we only had single parentheses around it.
Okay.
Very good question. And what if we wanted to write out 1,000 random numbers to a file? Or 10,000 or 100,000? Let's see how long that would take. This will probably be the last thing we do. So I'm just going to hardwire our file name to random.txt. File name is equal to quote random.txt. And let's open that file for writing. So file equals open fn, comma, W, and I need to import the random library. Import random. Or from random, import rand int.
Which one's better?
This one only, I like this one because, but then we can say x is equal to rand int like that without prefixing the name random. But sometimes I like seeing the library. It just depends on your style. Do you like seeing the word, the library prefixing the function name or not? Otherwise, there's no real reason to choose one over the other, unless you think you could have name collision. So let's have a for loop. For x in range 1, let's write out 100,000 lines, which is 5 zeros. Now let's get a random number. R is equal to rand int. I want a random number between the value of 1 and 1,000. And let's write it out. File 5.write, we need to take that random number and convert it to a string. So str parentheses r in parentheses, but we better tack on our new line as well. File.write, quote, \n, end quote. And then let's write a done message, just so that we know we're done. Let's close the file, file.close, and then print wrote to, end quote, comma, fn for file name. 10,000 writes is not really that many in the grand scheme of things. Printing out this stupid data takes a while, but you see how quickly it wrote to random.txt once the screen output takes astronomically longer than processing stuff in memory or saving to a file. Saving to a file is astronomically longer than writing to memory, but it's still far faster. So up here where I was writing out 1,000 lines, I'm just going to change that to 11 lines so that I don't have to see that happen every single time. But I'm curious, how long would it take to write 1,000,000 lines? So I'm going to put 6 zeros there rather than 5. And I could get errors because I couldn't see what I was typing. Still wrote lickety-split. I'm almost puzzled as to whether it's actually working that fast or not. So I'm going to go try to find file t.txt, random.txt, and open it up. Yeah, they're all there. Machines are amazingly fast anymore. How about 10 million? I'm going to create a 10 megabyte file. Add one more zero. Now it's actually taking some time. All right, wrote it. Yeah, we created a 10 megabyte file. We could keep doing that until we filled up our hard drive. That'd be exciting. All right, that's about enough of that. About the last thing I want to cover, and I think we're going to have to wait until next week to do it, is the idea of checking the operating system for directories. Getting a current working directory, looking at a list of files so that we can pick a file to open, right? Or verify that a file exists before we try to save over it, or that it doesn't exist, right? Because right now our code would just blow away. If we have random.txt and we save to it, the old contents are gone. We might want to check to see if it exists before we do that. And we will talk about that next class period. And of course you can read ahead. And so it's really like only 3 more slides on this. So I'd like for y'all to go ahead and do the quiz over this chapter.
There was, do we do the exercises that are above the quiz or just the quiz?
Just the quiz is for a grade. You feel like doing the exercises to learn it, then that's great. I ought to assign them as extra credit, but nah, I hadn't planned on making y'all do it. If somebody wants to beg me for extra credit for doing the homework assignments, then come talk to me about it. All right, everybody look at your exams. Scroll up and down through the quiz answers. Whichever ones you didn't get full credit on, kind of take note. If you think I graded something incorrect, or if you want to ask about it, then you could either shoot me a text or save it up to ask me next week. All right, let's make a Dropbox for this. Sure, J.